Last chance, FLW, BFL Day 2. Well, this is it. We have to make it happen. Pretty much a lot, the whole season's really riding on this tournament. I know it's going to be tough. Lake Norman has always been challenging for me. It's a 4.5 hour drive from the house. So here we go. I hope you enjoy this video. Day one, I started up the river and I thought, well, maybe some of this will look familiar to me, and it does. A lot of I fish a lot of rivers, and I thought it would be a good idea, but I really couldn't make anything happen up the river. And I ended up fishing some bridges on day one, throwing a lot of your traditional spotted bass type lures around, bridge pilings, and really didn't catch anything, didn't get any bites. Later in the day I switched to a spinnerbait. I got on some points, the wind was blowing, and I thought, well, maybe I can make something happen. And I did end up catching some fish on these points. I don't know, maybe I caught 5, 6, 7 fish doing this. A couple of them were keepers, most of them were not. Nothing big, probably 1.5 pound fish at most, but it did give me some confidence that there was some fish in the lake. All right, it's day 2, Lake Norman. Not a whole lot to report from yesterday. Caught a couple fish. We'll see how the day goes today. It's over. These spots are so skinny. So day 2, I started out throwing a Whopper Plopper that morning. I had heard the fish were biting. Whopper Plopper is pretty decent on the lake. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's just a topwater prop style bait. It's got a spinner on the back of it, and I ended up catching a few fish on this lure. I think there should be one coming up here that I caught. They were actually pretty aggressive on this thing. Yeah, there you go. And I was throwing it on braid, which is what I typically do with my topwater lure. Away from me. Day 3 practice, I tried a lot of different things. I tried some docks, I tried out deep. But again, not a great day. I caught a few fish, more than I had, but nothing to really go off on. Here's the end of day 3 practice. I still can't believe you set the hook on that one you did.
Here they come.
Robbed me. You had to do it. Had to do it.
I thought you want one fish.
Oh yeah, the one you set the hook on is the biggest fish of the day. Of course, right? Day before the tournament. Great job, Nick. Congratulations.
He got more than the water. He's plenty of man.
Well, I guess we're gonna go rig some rods and get some food, put some gas in the boat. But practice is over. Had a good time fishing with Vic today, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. I mean, I think we can catch some fish. I just don't know how big they'll be. Hopefully we get 1 or 2 big bites. That's what we're gonna need. Weights are gonna be really close. But looking forward to it. And I'll see y'all later. We'll see what tomorrow brings. See you. So, sitting here, I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? And for everyone that's fished a lot of tournaments, I think most of you know what I'm talking about. You put in a hard day's worth of practice, several days in my case, and you found some fish, but you really don't have the confidence that you should have going into the tournament. So you can see, starting out, my plan was to throw top water in the morning. I thought, well, maybe I could catch, a good largemouth, shallow. I found some stained water kind of in the back of some creeks. And I thought, well, maybe I could catch a big largemouth, and really it didn't work out for me. You know, I switched up baits a couple times, tried a few different things, and really ended up getting one bite in the morning from one of the areas that I thought could potentially produce a good fish, you know. And you know that happens in tournaments. You fish an area and you think, well, this is it, I should be able to put something together here, and you end up, you know, like, wow, that didn't turn out the way I thought it would. You know, you can see I've got a fish on here. It's a small fish, and it gave me a little bit of confidence that there were still some fish in the area, but it really didn't do much for me. I thought, and I was like, man, I don't think this thing's a keeper, and of course it wasn't. But you know, tournament day, all you guys know, you got to measure it. So measured the fish and threw it back, and that was pretty much it for my first area. You know, and it was really disappointing, but we kept on doing what we had to do. So we ended up pulling the chocks on this area, and I ran to some docks where I had shook a lot of fish off, went back, and you can see right here, I actually end up hooking up for a minute. The fish comes off, a nice bass. I could see it looked like a 2.5, 3 pounder, but whenever it seems like you watch a fish eat your bait, it's hard to hook him for whatever reason. And then we ran to some more docks. I caught 2 more keepers that day, the rest of the day. The weather came in. I really lost a lot of video footage, but this is about it for the tournament. If I had to go back and do it again, I would use the same lures. You know, I threw a Zoom trick worm. Most of you guys are familiar with. Put that on a 1/8 ounce shaky head. Threw that around a lot of docks, a lot of rocky points. I also threw a Senko, right? Just plain green pumpkin Senko. There's probably not a better lure out there that will consistently catch fish, especially spotted bass. And I wacky rigged it, and you know, it's kind of slow fishing, it's tedious, but it really worked. I caught a lot of fish on it, a lot of small fish. I also threw a jig, right? Again, a smaller jig, small profile for the spotted bass. I would love to tell you I caught bigger fish in the jig, but I don't think that was really the case at all. You know, I got about the same amount of bites. I really didn't see any change in the size or weight of the fish when I was throwing a jig, vice a Senko or a trick worm. And I threw the jig around a lot of docks, right? A lot of wood in the water that I had found, and to include a few brush piles, right? I found some brush piles offshore, and I threw the jig in there, and I worked it really slow. And to me, I thought I could get bit with soft plastics more than I could the jig, but certainly if I had to go to Norman again, I would throw a jig. And the last thing I guess I'll talk about is the Whopper Plopper, right? This is the one I threw. It's, you know, a smaller version of the Whopper Plopper. I think they have several different sizes. I don't own any of the big ones. I want to take that back. I probably have a couple, but I threw the small ones. I threw it in a white color. Some of the guys were talking about there was more like a herring color top water Whopper Plopper that seemed to work well. But those are the baits I used, and I did try a lot of different things in practice, to include some spy baits, and I threw some crankbaits, and I threw some poppers. I even threw some spoons, and consistently it was kind of more of a finesse bite with the soft plastics and the Whopper Plopper for top water. And I guess for me, Norman always seems to be a dock lake. You know, I read where a lot of the guys were fishing brush piles offshore. I saw Brian Thrift offshore fishing what I assumed were brush piles. You know, the electronics these guys have are probably certainly better than mine. I don't have a 360 or a Garmin, the live scope. I don't have any of that stuff. So
I did find some brush piles, and I also read where the guy that won it spent like 3 months placing brush piles in, and I really don't see how you compete with that, especially when it's a 4.5 hour drive. It's not excuses. I think it's just reality, and the truth of the matter is, every time you fish these BFLs and you go 4.5 hours away from the house, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, you're hoping to really kind of stumble into something that nobody else has figured out, or something a little off, because I feel like most of these locals are fishing the tournaments 2 or 3 days a week. And as far as if I was going to Norman, if I had a tournament again next year, I may fish it again, depending on what BFL division I decide to fish. I would probably start on docks. That's probably what I would do, just because the docks seem to be a consistent bite. I would probably throw a lot of light soft plastics, and I would hope that I found 10 or 15 docks that were holding better than average fish. Top water is certainly an option. I did go up the river some, and what I discovered about the river is if the water is moving, if they're pulling water, you can catch some fish up there. But I also found out that they don't really pull a whole lot of water in the weekends, which is most of when your tournaments are. So I wouldn't go up there and mess with the river. I'm sure there's some guys that are really good up there. I couldn't put anything together consistently up there because the water just wasn't moving. So that's the whiffum here for Norman, right? Start on docks, throw soft plastics. I would stay towards mid to lower lake. That's what I would concentrate on. I wouldn't mess with up the river. I would keep my lure selection simple. And if you've got some really good electronics, certainly spend some time offshore. I saw some really good fishermen doing it, and it looked like to me they were in 30, 40 foot of water, and they were just standing right over top of their electronics looking down. I was wondering if they were throwing maybe a Demiki rig or something like that, but you know, it's hard to tell. So Norman is a spotted bass lake. I never have been able to figure out any rhyme or reason when to catch largemouth and when to catch spots. I know it's notorious for small fish. It's notorious for a lot of fish, and that certainly held up to be true for this tournament for me.
Please check out Mercury Marine, 911 Custom Lures, TH Marine, and the Marine Raider Foundation, helping our veterans.